They laughed when I walked out. They didn't know I was walking away with everything. My name is Camille. I'm 29 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The microphone gave a little squeal. Not loud, not painful, just enough to pull every head toward the altar. One of those feedback hums that always seems to show up when the moment's too perfect, like it knows something's about to crack. I remember the sound more than anything else. The chandeliers above us, imported glass, strung with blush pink silk bows, trembled from the bass of the DJ's subwoofers. You could hear the soft vibration in the walls, like the whole building was holding its breath. Guests shifted in their chairs, and the hum of their anticipation woven with champagne flutes clinking behind them. The string quartet had just finished playing my favorite track, Turning Page, the wedding version, and there he was, standing across from me in a three-piece suit, the one I picked with him at the outlet mall in Tennessee last spring, tan with navy accents. He always said he liked looking like someone off a Hallmark poster. I was holding my vows, handwritten cream cardstock, and tucked in a folded napkin so my hands wouldn't get them sweaty. I had dotted the I in his name with a small heart. I felt numb, not nervous, just light, like something wasn't quite real. Then he looked up, smiled, shuffled his feet a little, and said, "Camille, I vow to honor you, to protect you, to always keep—" He blinked, then breathed. "Emily, safe in my heart." My first reaction wasn't even pain. It was silence. I felt the air suck out of the room, not literally. Not yet. But something shifted in the pressure. The DJ looked up from his console. My maid of honor, Kayla, choked on a sip of her mimosa and tried to hide it as a cough. One of his groomsmen turned, slow motion, and whispered something to the one beside him. There was this pause, like the whole ceremony hit pause. And in that pause, you could hear it. The sound of a dozen smartphones slowly rising in unison, recording, capturing, immortalizing. The officiant didn't know what to do. And he gave a little chuckle, like maybe it was just a slip, maybe it was nerves. He glanced at me, unsure whether to continue. My mother, 3 rows back, clutched her pearls like we were watching a soap opera. I looked at him, and he looked like he didn't even know what he'd said. Like it slipped out of his mouth the way someone accidentally calls their teacher Mom. I said nothing, just stepped back. 1 step, then 2. My veil shifted behind me, catching the draft of a nearby fan. I could feel the beads of it slide down my bare back, and then I said the only thing I could say. "Excuse me." Not loud, not furious, just final. I turned, walked past the officiant, down the steps, through the aisle, past gasping aunts and wide-eyed college friends, past the cameras, past the string quartet now awkwardly standing with their bows still in hand. Someone tried to call my name, maybe Kayla, maybe his sister. I didn't turn, and before anyone could stop me, I walked straight out the side door of that $100,000 wedding, into the Tennessee heat, and slammed the door behind me like I was sealing a casket. The sound of it echoed in the vestibule, one long metallic thud that swallowed the music and laughter on the other side. The handle rattled once as if someone tried to follow, but the latch held. I stood there, half blinded by daylight, my hands trembling around the folded vows I'd never read. The world outside felt louder, too real. Cicadas screaming from the oak trees, a truck downshifting on the nearby highway, the smell of cut grass mixing with champagne that had splashed on my dress. My heels sank slightly into the gravel as I stepped off the brick path. The silk of my train dragged behind, collecting dust like a ghost tail. I didn't cry. I waited for the tears, but they didn't come. Instead, everything slowed. I could see each dust mote catching in the sunlight. It could hear the faint murmur of voices through the thick church doors. Words like, "Did she just?" and "Oh my God, see," floated through the seams. I walked toward the parking lot. Each step made the fabric whisper against my legs. My lipstick had started to dry, cracking at the corners. I wiped it with the back of my hand and left a smear of coral across my wrist. There was a bench near the rose bushes. I'd picked them myself during planning. All coral and ivory because they reminded me of sunset clouds. I sat there, half in shock, half in clarity. A bee hovered near my veil before deciding I wasn't worth it. I took out my phone, notifications already blinking. The group chat with my bridesmaids. Camille? What's going on? Please tell me this is a joke. Then another, a message from my cousin Liv, who'd been filming the whole thing. Girl, it's already on TikTok. Of course it was. I laughed. One of those hollow, a breath through your nose laughs that feel more like exhaling disbelief than humor. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I could hear his voice again. Emily, safe in my heart. The way he'd said it wasn't casual. It had weight, affection, muscle memory, like his tongue had formed that name too many times to forget it. I stared at the cracked asphalt and whispered, "Who the hell is Emily?" My engagement ring caught the sunlight, throwing a prism on the ground beside me. I twisted it once, twice, and like maybe the right angle would turn time backward. Behind the doors, the ceremony had devolved into chaos. I heard the muffled bass of the DJ's mic. Folks, if we could just take 5 minutes. Then a woman's cry. Maybe his mother, echoing something like, "She didn't mean it," followed by applause that died halfway through. I stood. My dress felt heavier now, like it had absorbed the weight of every stare, every whispered conversation that would ripple through that town for months. So the sun pressed against my shoulders. Sweat beaded at my hairline. I looked down the hill where the photographer's car was parked, the one with the Happily Ever After Productions decal. Even that felt like mockery. I started walking again, slower this time. Each step clicked against the pavement, echoing between the brick walls of the venue. I could still smell the floral arrangements wafting out of the open window, peonies, gardenias, and the faint sweetness of buttercream from the cake I'd never taste. I reached the edge of the parking lot. My rental car sat in the corner, wrapped in ribbons that read, "Just Married." I wanted to rip them off. Instead, I just leaned against the hood and stared at my reflection in the windshield. The veil had slipped sideways. My mascara had smudged into faint gray shadows under my eyes. I looked like a woman halfway between a bride and a ghost. My phone buzzed again, this time a call. It's his name on the screen. I let it ring, watched it go to voicemail, then again and again. Finally, I answered, "Camille, please." His voice cracked through the speaker. "You have to believe me. It was just, I don't even know why I said it." "Who is she?" I asked. My voice came out steady, almost too calm. He hesitated. The silence on the line stretched so long I could hear the hum of the power lines overhead. "An old friend," he finally said, "from before." "It just slipped." "Friends don't live in your vows," I said. "Camille, please, I swear to God." I hung up. I didn't want his panic. I wanted quiet. A bird landed on the car antenna, cocked its head at me, then flew away. That tiny motion felt truer than anything he'd said all year. I opened the passenger door, sat inside, and let the air conditioning blast across my skin. The dress rustled around me like paper. I pulled out the folded vows from the napkin. The ink had smudged slightly from sweat, but the words were still legible. I'd spent nights writing them, each line a promise to believe in him more than I'd believed in myself. Now, reading them felt like reading fiction. "You taught me patience," one line said. "You showed me what loyalty means." I almost laughed. The irony burned hotter than the sun outside. I folded the pages carefully, slid them into the glove compartment, and stared at the horizon. The Tennessee hills shimmered under the noon light, the kind of postcard view people travel for, and all I could think was how much I wanted to disappear into it. Another notification, a news alert. "Wedding gone wrong. Groom says wrong name at altar." It already had thousands of views. A clip, probably from Liv's phone, looping endlessly for strangers to dissect. My humiliation turned into their entertainment. I took a breath, slow, grounded. And for the first time since he'd said that name, a thought anchored itself in me. Not panic, not despair. Just the sharp, cold beginning of resolve. If the world wanted to watch, they would watch me rise. I looked at my reflection again, wiped the last trace of mascara from my cheek, and whispered, "All right, let's start over." Then I turned the key. The engine hummed alive. The ribbons fluttered in the hot air behind the car as I pulled away, leaving the laughter, the cameras, the shattered perfection, everything, in the dust. Because what they didn't know yet was that I was walking away with far more than they'd taken. The air outside tasted like metal, not like blood, not like anything poetic, just metal. That raw, static tang you get in the South when a summer storm is sitting just beyond the hills, thinking about rolling in but holding back. You feel it more than you see it, like something's waiting, watching. I stood in the gravel by the side of the venue, tucked between a rose trellis and the catering truck, and for a minute I couldn't hear anything except my own heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. And then the music started again. Inside. The DJ, God bless him, probably thought keeping the playlist running would ease the tension. But the song he picked, "You Are the Reason," felt like someone was mocking me in slow motion. I didn't cry. Not then. I reached up. I pulled the pins from my veil one by one. Each pin made a faint click against my scalp. A delicate sound swallowed by the hum of generators from the food truck. The veil loosened like breath leaving lungs. I let it fall into my hands like a flag folding in surrender. The fabric was still warm from the lights inside. I held it like it meant something. Then I tucked it under my arm and started walking. No one followed me. Not at first. Not until I was halfway across the gravel lot. Heels in one hand, veil in the other, when Kayla finally caught up. The crunch of her stilettos came fast, uneven, desperate. "Camille, wait, please. Can we talk?" I turned slightly, not stopping. "What's there to talk about?" "It was probably just a slip." I stopped. "Then why do you look guilty right now?" She froze mid-step, the way someone freezes when they accidentally step on a lie. Her shoulders lifted, then fell. The sound of the wedding music floated faintly behind us, muffled bass. Forced laughter, the clatter of silver trays. That was the first red flag, not the name, not the slip, not even the chaos, but that look in Kayla's eyes, like she knew something she hadn't told me. I turned to face her, full. The gravel shifted beneath my bare feet. "Do you know who Emily is?" Too fast. "No." "You sure?" "Camille." She bit her lip, eyes darting to the truck where two caterers pretended not to listen. "Because he didn't look confused," I said quietly. "He looked comfortable." She went silent. Her thumb rubbed circles over the silver bracelet I'd given her last Christmas. Nervous tell. "You're not thinking straight right now," she said finally. "You just walked out of your wedding." "No," I cut in. "I walked out of a lie." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The steadiness scared her more. I watched her swallow hard, like every word I said carved its way into her. A gust of wind lifted the corner of the veil under my arm. For a second, I thought it might fly away. Maybe I should have let it. I turned and left her standing there, framed by the trellis and the drifting smell of garlic butter from the catering pans. Her silhouette stayed in my peripheral vision until I rounded the building. By the time I reached the back of the venue, my phone buzzed. One text, my sister, a screenshot. I opened it, half expecting another, "Are you okay?" Instead, my reflection flashed on the black screen before the image loaded. And then I saw it. From his Spotify account. Our shared one, the one linked to the living room TV. A playlist. Rehearsal vows. Emily. Created 3 weeks ago. Shared with one account only. And it wasn't mine. I stared at the screen until the glare of sunlight made the text disappear, then tilted it back until it reappeared again, cruel and clear. Underneath, and in tiny gray letters, "Last played 2 days ago." That was the moment disbelief snapped. Not the vows, not the gasps, not the stunned silence in the room. It was the playlist, because you don't name something that specific unless it's real. Unless it means something. Unless she means something. My fingers went cold. I could still hear the crowd inside, cheering nervously for nothing, the DJ's voice announcing a quick intermission. It sounded like another life. And I pressed the lock button on my phone, slid it into the pocket of my dress. Yes, my wedding gown had pockets. I'd thought it was cute, and exhaled. The veil brushed my arm like a whisper of the girl I was 10 minutes ago. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove. The road out of town cut through green hills and half-collapsed barns. My reflection in the rear view looked ghostly in patches of sun. I'd never realized how quiet Tennessee could be when you left the main road. And I drove barefoot, the satin pooling around my legs, veil tucked on the passenger seat like a passenger who'd lost her face. The sky was turning the color of tarnished brass. I rolled down the window, let the humid air tangle my hair until it felt wild, human again. By the time I saw the lake, the sky was threatening rain. My aunt's lake house sat on the edge of still water, half hidden behind willow trees. She used to bring me there every summer when life in Knoxville felt too sharp. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just frogs, wind chimes, and the occasional fishing boat drifting by. It was perfect. I parked in the gravel drive, left the car running for a moment. The dashboard clock blinked 5:42 p.m. My phone vibrated with another flood of messages, friends, family, him, but the signal was already weak here. A small mercy. Inside, the air smelled like dust and cedar. The curtains had been drawn halfway, cutting the light into slices across the floor. I toed off my shoes, at the soles leaving faint wet marks on the wooden planks. I pulled off the wedding dress in the bathroom, one layer at a time. The zipper caught halfway. I had to twist awkwardly to free it. When the fabric finally slipped off, it made a soft sigh against the tile. I folded it on the sink like evidence, a relic from another timeline. Then I stepped into the shower. At first, the water was too hot, almost scalding. It steamed up the mirror within seconds, blurring my outline. I stood there until it cooled to lukewarm, then to cold. My skin prickled. The sound of the spray was constant, steady, louder than my thoughts. I don't know how long I stayed under. Long enough for my fingers to wrinkle, long enough for night to start crawling in through the small window above the curtain. But my mind went somewhere else entirely. Back to 2 nights before the wedding. We'd been in our apartment. I remember the hum of the ceiling fan, and the faint citrus scent from the candle he'd lit. I was curled on the couch, laptop balanced on my knees, scrolling through final minute logistics. Seating chart, vendor confirmations, stupid ribbon color corrections. He was at his desk in the corner, headphones on, speaking softly to himself. Practicing his vows, he said. I'd smiled at how earnest he looked, how he mouthed the words silently like a schoolboy rehearsing lines. Want to run them by me? I'd asked. He'd laughed, shaking his head. Nope. Bad luck. Since when are you superstitious? Since I'm terrified of messing this up. That grin, tilted, boyish, had undone every guard I had. It worked on waitresses, baristas, and my overly forgiving father. It worked on me. I laughed and let it go. That was my mistake. I let so many things go. The late-night text 2 weeks ago from a contact saved as E. I'd seen it flash on his screen, can't wait, and asked, half teasing, who's E? He'd said, the florist. I'd believed him. The playlist in his car, rehearsal dinner night, one song titled Emily's Theme. I thought it was an artist's name. I even complimented it. That's pretty. Who's Emily? He'd smiled, eyes on the road. Just a track title. Even Kayla's glances, her quick subject changes whenever his phone buzzed. I filed it all under wedding stress. Now, standing under a sputtering shower in a borrowed bathroom, I replayed every frame, every shrug. Every small lie wrapped in charm, and it all made sense. The cold water finally numbed me. My body felt weightless, my mind razor sharp. When I turned off the tap, the silence hit like a new sound. I wrapped myself in one of the lake house towels, scratchy, faded green, and wiped a circle in the fogged mirror. My reflection stared back, hair plastered to my cheeks, mascara faintly shadowing my eyes. For the first time in months, I saw myself clearly. Not a bride, not a victim. But a woman who'd just been handed a blueprint. I traced a drop of water down my collarbone with my fingertip, following it like a line of thought. He'd built the weapon himself, the playlist, the name, the arrogance, and handed it to me. All I had to do was learn how to use it. Outside, thunder murmured over the lake. The wind shifted the chimes on the porch. Somewhere across the water, a boat's lantern glowed like a small, distant truth. I sat on the bed wrapped in the towel. Alm opened my phone and stared at the list of messages I hadn't read. His, Kayla's, Mom's, even the wedding planner's apology. I scrolled through them all, calm now. The storm would come, literal and otherwise. And I wasn't going to run from it. I was going to stand in it. The lake was quiet that night, not the kind of quiet that comforts you, the kind that makes you feel like the whole world knows what you just found out, and it's holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do with it. The air had a thickness to it, like water about to turn to rain. The moon sat low, coppery, casting its reflection in shaky ripples across the lake. Every sound was magnified, the creak of the porch rail, the slow hum of cicadas hiding somewhere in the trees, the occasional pop of a fish breaking the surface. I sat on the porch in one of those old white plastic chairs my aunt refused to throw away, the kind that groan under your weight but never actually break. At my bare feet pressed against the splintered boards, a mug of black coffee cooled beside me. Strong, burnt, bitter. I didn't want it, but it gave my hands something to hold. I wasn't tired. I wasn't even wired. I was clear. Inside the house, a single lamp flickered through the window, that sickly yellow glow that makes dust visible in the air. My wedding dress was gone from sight, folded into a black trash bag and shoved behind the boiler tank in the laundry closet. Out of sight, hung out of pity. I didn't hide it because it hurt. I hid it because it mocked me. A costume from a play that ended halfway through the first act. I stared at the lake until the reflection of the moon broke into pieces with each ripple. Somewhere in that rhythm, I heard myself breathe again. Then I stood, brushed the sand from my legs, and went inside. The floor was cold. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly, each second slicing through the silence. The kitchen smelled faintly of old coffee grounds and rain through the screen door. I opened my laptop. It took 10 long minutes for the Wi-Fi booster to come to life. An ancient white box that needed to be balanced at a perfect angle, propped with a spoon under one corner to keep the light from blinking red. I waited, drumming my fingers on the table, watching the icon on the screen pulse like a heartbeat. Finally, the bars flickered on, and I began. First stop, iCloud. And he'd shared his login months ago when his phone cracked on a trip to Asheville. I'd helped him recover photos, promised I'd never snoop. He'd joked that there was nothing to hide. I remember that. His laugh, the false innocence of it. He'd never changed the password. I typed it in slowly. One uppercase letter. His mother's maiden name. The number that matched our anniversary. He always was sentimental in the safest, most performative ways. The archive opened. A quiet digital confessional. Messages, notes, voicemails, calendar invites. My fingers hovered over the search bar. I typed M, just M. The results populated instantly. One note stood out. Vows, alt version. My pulse skipped. The file opened with a lag, as if even the internet wanted to delay what I was about to see. His handwriting appeared as neat black text on white background, every sentence a knife pretending to be poetry, as it looked almost identical to the vows he'd written for me, except wherever my name should have been, it said hers. Emily, 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 over and over, printed in perfect rhythm, like he'd been practicing the muscle memory of betrayal. I scrolled slowly. My reflection stared back at me in the laptop screen, half-lit, hollow-eyed. I wasn't shaking from rage. I was shaking from the ease of it all. How a secret could live in plain sight, protected only by laziness. The note was dated 2 weeks ago, edited 4 days before the wedding, the same days he'd claimed to be staying at his brother's house for last-minute errands. I checked the metadata. Every timestamp lined up with the lies I could now name precisely. Dinner with family, picking up cufflinks, just need guy time. He'd been with her, practicing vows with her name. I closed the file and stared at the lake through the kitchen window. Fireflies blinked lazily near the shore. I thought about how betrayal never arrives like thunder. It arrives like humidity, quiet, thick, suffocating, already in your lungs before you notice. But I wasn't done. I kept digging, messages, photos, notes. Then I found the private iMessage thread. EJ, no photo, just gray bubbles. Most of the conversation had been wiped clean, but not the attachments folder. He must have forgotten the cloud backs up media separately. I clicked once. A thumbnail blinked into view. A video. 15 seconds long. The first frame showed his face, half in shadow, standing in what looked like his brother's living room. The lighting was warm, golden, intimate. The video shook slightly, handheld. A woman's voice, soft, playful, off camera. Okay, go again, but slower this time. Then his voice, careful, rehearsed. Emily, I vow to honor you, to protect you. He smiled at the end, that same crooked smile he'd used to get away with everything. Her laughter followed, light, satisfied. I paused the video halfway through. The air in the kitchen seemed to thicken, the hum of the refrigerator louder than it should have been. It wasn't that she was beautiful. She wasn't particularly. It wasn't that they looked in love. They didn't. It was the ease, the way her name fit into his mouth like it had lived there for months. Like I had been the rehearsal, and she had been the show. I downloaded everything, every video, every note, every screen recording of his hypocrisy. I saved them to 3 different drives. One external hard drive in my suitcase, one cloud account under an alias, and one to an old Gmail I hadn't opened since college. I labeled the folder simply, Blueprint. Then I sat back, fingers still trembling over the keyboard, and exhaled for what felt like the first time that day. 2 days passed. The sky broke open once, poured rain, then cleared again. I stayed at the lake house, watching storms drift across the water. My phone stayed silent except for the occasional buzz of gossip texts I ignored. No calls from him, no desperate apologies, no midnight confessions, only one message, from his mother. His mom. Camille, I'm sure there's a simple explanation. Please don't ruin this. Ruin this. As if it wasn't already ash. I didn't respond. I wasn't going to ruin anything. I was going to edit it. That's when the idea arrived. Sharp, cinematic, perfect. The reception highlights. Mark, our videographer, offered a quick turnaround package. A polished 3-minute recap for guests who couldn't attend. Music, vows, laughter, slow-motion confetti. A miniature love story. I could see it in my mind. The moment the wrong name echoed through the speakers, surrounded by applause. The audience watching with champagne in hand, smiling, until the edit turned. Until they heard what I heard. A truth stitched into the middle of a fairy tale. I opened a new email, created a burner account. The subject line read, Wedding film, additional clip for bride. I typed fast. Hi Mark, this is Camille's assistant. She'd like to include a short surprise clip in the final highlight reel, a personal message she wants revealed at minute 3:30. Please keep this confidential from the groom. Then I attached the raw footage, the video of his voice, the giggle, the slower this time. I labeled it carefully, private, play at minute 3:30. Mark replied within hours. Got it, will insert as requested. Looks powerful. I stared at that word. Powerful. He had no idea. I closed the laptop, leaned back in the creaky chair, and smiled for the first time in days. The storm outside had moved east, leaving the smell of wet pine and ozone in the air. Then I reached for my phone. One message, 5 words. Let's talk. I'm ready. He replied almost instantly, like he'd been waiting for the cue, like a bad actor missing his co-star. Guess we met 2 days later in public, a brunch cafe in Franklin we used to love before everything started tasting like tension. The place hadn't changed. Same chalkboard menu, Same tin ceiling fans turning lazily. Same smell of cinnamon pancakes and burnt espresso. Couples laughed around us. Waiters carried mimosas on silver trays. Sunlight spilled through the windows like a lie you can't stop believing. He was already seated when I arrived. So he stood up quickly, too quickly, knocking his knee against the table leg. The silverware rattled. He smiled the way people smile at funerals. Tight, rehearsed, hopeful. "You look good," he said. "Better." "I am," I answered. He hesitated, then reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine. "Camille, I didn't mean to say the wrong name. I swear it was nerves." "I believe you." He blinked, caught off guard by how easy it came. I believe you were nervous," I said softly. "Because you were lying to two women at the same time." His eyes widened, a flicker of fear breaking through the charm. He leaned back, the color drained from his face. "Camille, please. I was confused. I didn't mean for it to go this far." "You didn't mean for me to find out." That silenced him. His hand slipped back into his lap as if it had touched fire. I let the pause linger, let the cafe noise swell around us, plates clinking. Sit the hiss of steam from the espresso machine, the distant laugh of someone at the counter. All of it normal, ordinary, while our world quietly cracked between us. Then I smiled. "It's okay," I said, tone calm, almost kind. "Really?" He stared, waiting for the explosion that never came. I leaned in slightly, elbows on the table, voice low enough for only him to hear. "Let's throw a new reception. Just a small one, for the friends who didn't make it." "You reframe the narrative." His head jerked up, like a drowning man offered air. "Yes, God, yes," he said quickly. "I've been telling people you just needed space." "Tell them I needed grace." He nodded so fast it was almost comedic. And right there, in that bright little cafe with the smell of syrup and betrayal mixed in the air, the trap was set, and he didn't even see the net tightening. He showed up early. Of course he did. And his tie wasn't even on right, that lazy half knot he always defaulted to when he thought no one would notice. The collar curled unevenly, a faint coffee stain near the edge. He was pacing in front of the string lights we'd hung across the barn beams, pretending to check his phone, but really just measuring the distance between guilt and performance. The air smelled like hay and perfume, a mix of nostalgia and new beginnings that didn't quite blend. Then the floorboards creaked under his shoes as he walked back and forth, shoulders tight, jaw clenched in that way he did when he wanted to look composed. It was a second chance reception. That's what we called it when we invited people. Just a soft regathering, I'd said on the invites. Something small, for the guests who didn't get the full experience last time. Vague, strategic. Let their imaginations fill in the gaps. People came, curiosity outweighing manners. Friends from college? Co-workers who couldn't resist gossip. Distant relatives who'd heard whispers and wanted confirmation. They arrived with hesitant smiles and cheap gifts, their eyes scanning for tension like tourists hunting landmarks. The venue was smaller this time. A renovated barn just outside Franklin, strung with Edison bulbs that glowed warm against dark wood beams. The air hummed with faint country music and the low chatter of people pretending they weren't waiting for something to explode. And I wore a soft blue slip dress, not bridal, not mourning, neutral enough to confuse them, my hair loose, my lipstick deliberate, calm red, not fury red. I carried a wine glass not for comfort, but as armor. He tried to hug me. I shifted just enough that the glass stayed between us, the rim brushing against his chest. "Let's not rewrite the story," I said. He chuckled, that nervous boy-next-door laugh that once made people forgive him for everything. He scratched the back of his neck, his eyes darting to the guests. "You look better than I expected," he said. "You still talk like a man trying to pass an interview." A few people nearby glanced our way, uncertain whether to smile or pretend they hadn't heard. He gave a small laugh, one that didn't reach his eyes. The DJ took his cue around 7:15, just like we planned. The chatter softened, lights dimmed slightly. The projector on the far wall flickered to life, its hum blending with the faint buzz of conversation. And I watched him glance at me, confusion flickering, a question he didn't know how to phrase. The slideshow began, a voiceover, the same tone every wedding highlight reel uses, that syrupy optimism meant to make you forget real life exists, floated through the speakers. Love is built on moments, it began. Clips rolled, the aisle, the string quartet, the guests' applause, laughter, champagne, the illusion of forever. Then the vows, his vows. The crowd quieted instinctively, not like they could sense the shift in temperature. There it was, the moment, the one burned into every phone camera and memory. Camille, I vow to honor you, to protect you, to always keep the pause, the breath. Emily, safe in my heart. The room froze. Even those who hadn't been there the first time stiffened. You could hear someone's bracelet jingle as they lifted a hand to their mouth. He looked at me, eyes wide, as though hoping I'd stop it before it got worse. Camille, what is this? He whispered. I didn't answer, because the video didn't stop. The music faded. The screen went black. A few people murmured. Someone laughed nervously. Then, the flicker of a new clip. Vertical footage, grainy, intimate. A woman's voice, soft, teasing. Okay, go again, but slower this time. And then, his, the same cadence, the same charm. Only now the name wasn't mine. Emily, Emily. He said it like a prayer, like a promise he'd already kept. And her laugh followed, light, easy. His answering chuckle came through the speakers like static made human. I can't wait to do this for real, he said. Gasps rippled through the room. A wine glass clinked against the bar and didn't stop rolling. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." The air changed, dense, electric. The smell of sawdust and wine suddenly sharp, almost metallic. I stood perfectly still. Let it play. Every frame, every syllable, I wanted them to feel it. I asked the contrast between the fairy tale music and the off-camera laughter, between what they thought they knew and what they now couldn't unsee. When the video ended, silence filled the barn so completely that the hum of the projector became a kind of heartbeat. People turned, to him, to me, to the screen, back again, like an audience trying to decode a plot twist too cruel to be fiction. He moved first. Instinct. He stepped toward the projector. As if sheer physicality could undo digital evidence. Like if he stood in the beam of light, maybe it would blind them instead of expose him. But I was already there. The remote in my hand clicked once. The screen froze on his face, lit half in shadow, half in the glow of his own deceit. For anyone wondering why the wedding ended early, my voice sounded steadier than I felt. I gestured toward the screen. He said the wrong name. But I had to show you why it wasn't just a mistake. He opened his mouth, a reflex more than a decision. I lifted a hand. Let me finish. He froze, jaw tight. I turned to the crowd. Their eyes were wide, but no one looked away. Even the music outside, faint from the parking lot, seemed to pause. Some of you came here thinking I lost my mind, I said. That I walked out of a perfect wedding over one slip of the tongue. I took a step forward, heels clicking against the wooden floor. But I didn't walk away from a mistake. Another step. I walked away from a rehearsal. The sentence landed like a clean cut. One I wasn't invited to. A stillness followed, different from shock, purified, like the moment after thunder when you realize the storm has already passed. Someone clapped, a single, hesitant sound that echoed like a test balloon. Then another joined, and another. It wasn't celebration. It was acknowledgement, understanding. The applause grew. Slow and deliberate. He stood there, caught in the light of his own undoing, surrounded by people who would never unsee what they'd seen. I set the remote on the bar. The applause softened as I walked past them. No one stopped me. Outside, the night air hit like clarity. Cool, grounded, smelling of pine and distant rain. Crickets started up again, as if they'd been waiting for the cue. I stood near the gravel lot, wineglass still in hand, and the hum of conversation leaking faintly from the barn behind me. A light breeze tugged at my dress. I didn't have to wait long. The door creaked open behind me. footsteps crunched. He always had to say something. "You humiliated me," he said. I didn't turn. "No," I said. "You humiliated yourself. I just edited the footage." "You think this fixes anything?" His voice cracked on the word fixes. "You think people won't judge you for this?" "They already did," I said quietly. I just gave them the right story to tell." "I didn't mean to say her name." "But you meant to love her." He flinched. "You meant to write vows for her. Meant to keep me around as your backup plan until she said yes or no." He didn't deny it. Not this time. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, like a boy caught breaking something he could never replace. The barn lights flickered behind us. I knew the murmur of voices still alive inside, some sympathetic, some satisfied, the sound of a reputation rearranging itself. I finally turned to face him. "You rehearsed with her," I said. "I rehearsed surviving you." His face broke, not into tears, not apology, just the slow collapse of realization. The guilt hit him visibly, shoulders sinking, eyes lowering, the mask slipping all at once. He looked like gravity had finally remembered him. He walked away first, hands buried deep, Eccles's footsteps dragging against the gravel. No dramatic exit, just defeat. I watched until he disappeared into the dark. Then I looked up at the string lights through the barn window, still glowing, still steady, and for the first time since all of it began, I didn't need anyone to see me to believe me. I didn't need a witness. The reception ended quietly. No more speeches. No more music. Just the slow clatter of chairs being folded, half-finished drinks sweating onto wood. The shuffle of shoes against gravel as guests made polite escapes. Voices dropped to whispers, sentences half-finished. The kind of hush that happens when everyone knows they've just witnessed something raw, something they'll never admit to replaying later, even though they will. Some hugged me. Tight, awkward embraces that said everything and nothing. Others just looked, eyes full of pity and fascination, like I was the woman who'd walked out of a burning house without a single scorch mark. Only the smell of smoke in her hair. Not burned, but not untouched either. I stayed behind after everyone else had gone. The night had that hollow sound you only hear after a crowd disappears, the faint buzz of light bulbs, the clink of empty glasses being gathered, the lonely hum of a speaker that had forgotten the music stopped. Mark was still there, rolling up cords, wrapping them neatly around his forearm. The projector sat on a stool, still warm, its fan spinning down with a dying whir. But he didn't ask questions. He just looked at me, one quick, steady glance, then gave a small nod, quiet, almost brotherly. "You okay?" he asked. "I will be," I said. He smiled softly, the kind of smile people give when they know there's nothing to fix, but they wish they could try anyway. Then he packed the last cable into his case and left. I stood in the doorway and watched the last car pull out of the lot, its taillights washing the gravel in red for a few seconds before vanishing down the road. The night swallowed it, leaving only the soft static of crickets and the faint scent of wet grass rising with the wind. Then I turned back toward the barn. The string lights above the entrance swayed, flickering in the wind like they were tired of pretending, tired of holding up the illusion. A few of them buzzed faintly, ready to burn out. Inside, the decor was still intact, candles half melted into milky puddles, the centerpieces beginning to wilt. A few napkins had fallen onto the floor, their corners soaked in wine. On the chalkboard sign by the bar, my name still sat in cursive white paint. Camille and... I picked up the nearest cloth napkin, wiped the second half of the name away. The chalk smeared gray. Clean. The barn felt different now. Not haunted, just emptied. The echoes that had once held laughter were hollow. Stripped of pretense. I didn't hear him come back, but I felt it. The temperature shifted. A breath of air moved through the doorway, carrying the faint smell of his cologne, that mix of cedar and something metallic I'd once loved because it reminded me of safety. His footsteps were softer this time, not the confident rhythm I'd memorized during our years together. Slower, careful, like he'd forgotten how to walk without stepping on glass. "You ruined me," he said. And his voice cracked halfway through it, though he tried to sound certain. I didn't turn right away. My hand still rested against the chalkboard. "No," I said quietly. Then I turned. "I recorded you." He froze, his silhouette framed by the open doorway behind him. The wind caught the edge of his shirt. It fluttered slightly like something trying to escape. He looked at me like I was someone else. Maybe I was. Maybe the woman who had once softened her voice for him no longer existed. Maybe the one standing there, barefoot, steady, illuminated by the tired glow of string lights, was someone new entirely. "Why'd you do it like this?" he asked finally. His voice lowered, nearly pleading. "In front of everyone?" I tilted my head, met his eyes. "Because that's how you did it to me." He blinked as if he hadn't expected honesty to sound so simple. He opened his mouth, closed it. His throat moved with words he didn't dare say. "I gave you silence," I said. "I gave you trust. I let you practice your vows in another room because I believed you needed privacy. I gave you space when you were tired, grace when you were distracted, love when you were distracted by someone else." Each sentence landed heavier than the one before. He flinched like they were physical. He shook his head slowly, still not denying it, still searching for a version of this conversation where he got to play the hero again. "But you," I said, "you gave me rehearsal clips. You gave me proof. You gave me a story with an ending." He tried to speak, but I walked past him, the sound of my heels faint against the floorboards. I stopped at the door, hand resting on the wooden frame. "And I gave you an audience." That was it. No screaming, no drama. Just fact. I stepped outside. The air was cooler now, calmer. The night no longer watched me. It simply held space. I walked down the steps, the gravel crunching under my feet. Behind me, I could hear him breathing unevenly, still frozen where I'd left him. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. He could stay there, surrounded by the evidence of everything he rehearsed and everything he lost. I didn't take the decor, didn't need the photos, didn't even check if he was crying, because the point was never to break him. It was to rebuild myself, to prove that I could still make something out of the wreckage, even if it started as fire and silence. 3 weeks later, I sold the dress online. A woman from Nashville picked it up. She cried when she saw it, said it was the exact design she'd pinned on her vision board for months. She called it her dream dress. I didn't tell her its history. I just helped her carry it to her car, closed the trunk, and smiled. That night, I booked a flight. One way. Portland. I used the money from the dress deposit to cover the trip. I'd always wanted to see the Pacific, the coastlines, the lighthouses, the fog rolling in like unspoken thoughts. And at the morning I left, the sun came up in quiet stripes of gold and gray. My suitcase felt lighter than it should have. Maybe because, for once, I wasn't packing guilt. At the airport, I sat by the window, watching the planes taxi out across the runway. Somewhere between the engines roaring and the faint voice of a gate announcement, I realized I hadn't thought about him all day. The video from that night? I never posted it, never leaked it. That wasn't the point. I just wanted the people who had seen it, the ones who'd sat in that barn, phones trembling in their hands, eyes flicking between him and the screen, to remember what truth looks like when it stops apologizing for itself. The clip still lives on my hard drive, tucked away under a file named closure.mp4. I open it sometimes, not to relive it, but to remind myself that I didn't imagine any of it, that I chose the ending. And him? He moved back in with his brother. I heard through Kayla. And she came clean the day after the reception, left a voicemail, crying so hard she could barely breathe between words. She said she'd known about Emily, that she didn't know how to tell me without destroying the wedding. I listened once, then deleted it, because she already destroyed it. Not out of malice, out of fear. And maybe that's the part that stung the most. How silence can wound just as deeply as lies. Funny thing about vows, people talk about remembering them. But I've learned what really stays are the moments when they're broken, the quiet parts, the glances, the secrets that hum beneath the surface, waiting to be named. I remember her silence more than his words. I remember mine, too, the kind that held power instead of pain. Now, when I think about that day, I don't see a wedding. I see a turning point. A film cut cleanly down the middle, before and after. Before, a woman waiting for love to be proof. And after, a woman learning she didn't need proof to be enough. The lake house still stands where it always has, and sometimes when I visit my aunt, I walk down to the dock at night. The water there reflects everything: the trees, the moon, the sky. But if you stay long enough, the reflection shifts. It stops showing you what's above and starts showing you what's underneath. That's what truth does. It waits for you to stop looking away. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.